So I'm 26 years old. I am living in South Florida. This was around 2009. I was a restaurant manager full time, and then on the weekends I would supplement my income by teaching tennis to local kids around the area. And so I was meandering through life aimlessly, not doing much with it. Making money as fast as I could blow it, and not doing much with my life, honestly. And one day I'm coincidentally house sitting for my tennis teaching boss. And I don't know, something came over me. I whipped out my laptop and I realized that I hadn't been home in close to maybe 6 years at the time. And I became overwhelmed by the sensation to go see my friends and family. So I hop on the computer, I booked a flight, and I didn't tell anybody but one friend of mine at the time that I thought could actually make ends meet. And so I book a flight for Christmas Eve of all days, right? Crazy, I know. And she agreed to pick me up from the airport. And a couple of days later, after booking my flight, for whatever reason, I started feeling sort of like a bilateral weakness on my shoulders. And it, started becoming progressive, so much so that I had a hard time shampooing my hair and putting down a button down or even brushing my teeth for long periods of time. And I didn't think much of it. I was pretty physical at that time. I was a pretty buff kid eating everything in sight, definitely not a vegan back then. And so I did the first thing that came to mind, which is pop a couple of Tylenol and stretch a little and call it a day. And so as I came closer, I should say, to the date on which I was scheduled to make the trip, things kept getting worse and worse. Like, these daily routines that we take for granted every day became increasingly more difficult. And I remember not being able to brush my teeth for 2 days because I literally couldn't, raise my toothbrush to my mouth and brush it for more than 10 seconds at a time. It was crazy. But I knew that nothing would stop me from coming home to Puerto Rico, which is where I'm originally from. And so I just pictured that Mom and Dad would love to see me after such a long time, and that was basically the motivation to come home. So Christmas Eve rolls around. I make it all the way to the airport. I park my car. I'm thinking I'm only going to be there for 4 days, so it's no harm, no foul. I'll just pick the parking garage. And as I'm inching closer to the front desk, I realize that I'm having the toughest time reaching for my wallet in my back pocket and pulling it out. And so closer and closer to the front desk, I have more and more difficulty doing this. And so I end up missing my flight because I literally couldn't grip my back pocket and pull out my wallet. And so I have to call my friend, tell her, listen, I'm unfortunately going to miss this flight for this and this reason. She couldn't believe it. And I eventually get home at around close to almost midnight on Christmas Eve. It's the craziest story you've ever heard, probably, but this is actually what happened. And so with the little energy that I do have, I'm trying to underhand some rocks in my mom's window because she's a heavy sleeper. She wasn't picking up her phone. And I finally, after a couple of minutes, get her to turn on the lights and come downstairs. And when she opened that door, it was definitely Christmas morning, a little early. She gave me the biggest hug I think I've ever received, still to this day. So the next day is obviously Christmas. We spend it together, open gifts, and have a lot of food together. And the day after that, I go see my dad and surprise him on the west coast of the island, which is where he lives. And when I come back to town, I confess to Mom that, I had been experiencing this bilateral weakness on my shoulders, and I might as well just go see a doctor while I'm in town. So we go do that, and we come across this salt and pepper haired lady who does sort of like a battery of tests that you're probably accustomed to doing. And after a couple of assessments, she sits me down and said, Francisco, I think you have something that's called Guillain-Barré syndrome. Right off the bat, I'm thinking it can't be anything pretty because I can barely pronounce it at the time. And so she starts explaining that Guillain-Barré syndrome is sort of like a neurological disorder where your brain starts having difficulty communicating its messages with the rest of your body as a result of lacking something that's called myelin sheath. Myelin sheath is sort of like an intermediary between your brain and the rest of the body, where it's located in your peripheral nervous system. At least this is what she told me at the time. And my own body was attacking itself, at least she thought, and it was corroding the sheath. And so if no sheath exists, that means that your brain is going to have a hard time communicating. And so this is eventually causing my bilateral weakness, and as a result, it would get progressive and progressive. And so I didn't know it at the time. Obviously, she's explaining to me on a whim, and she goes to the extent of saying that if we don't catch this early, you could actually die from it, because it could make itself into your diaphragm and collapse your lungs. And people have been known to die from it. And so, as you can imagine, I'm 26 years old. I'm, at least in my eyes, I was really healthy at that time. And so I start sitting down and begin to sweat profusely as if I'm playing tennis in the hot, scorching sun. And I remember feeling pale. I didn't look into a mirror because I didn't want to scare myself even more. And, I was very jarred coming out of there. I was really scared. And as with anyone, you probably go see a second doctor for a second opinion. So we go do that the day before I have to head down back to Miami. And so we come across another doctor, and I had explained to him that a couple of weeks prior to me coming to Puerto Rico, I was doing some heavy lifting in the gym, and he chalked it up to sort of like a pinched nerve or something. And he gave me some anti-inflammatories and sent me on my way. But he asked me to go ahead and see him again a couple of days after that. And so that meant that I would have to call the airline, cancel my trip, or at least postpone it so that I can follow doctor's orders. So after do that, I became increasingly weaker to the point where I would unfortunately lose the grip in my hands and start dropping hot cups of coffee on my feet and break them, obviously. And that's how I knew that this thing was taking over my body. And lo and behold, a couple of days later, I'm trying to walk up the stairs to mom's second story in her home, and my knee buckled, and all 6'2", 200 pounds of me at the time just completely ate it. I must have had a concussion for a couple of days. I've never, ever felt so hard in my life. I felt backwards. I'll never forget that. And that then was probably the worst physical condition I had ever felt in my entire life. So that right there let me know that the very first lady doctor was absolutely right. Something was definitely wrong with me neurologically. And I started thinking that a 4-day trip to come see my parents, specifically stay with my mom, was something unforeseen, and it would take an absolute massive toll on her.
It's really difficult being a single mom. And it's even more difficult when you have an only child and that child is very sick. And even though that child is an adult, he's still your child. It was a desperate time for me as a mom, seeing him falling, limiting his movements. I had to literally eliminate my dining room and bring down a platform bed, which was next to a full bathroom that I had, so he can sleep there, because I wasn't able to carry my 200-pound baby up to his room every day and back down. So I set that up, and it was the best thing I could have done, because I wasn't able to do anything else. So we used a wheelchair. It was a platform bed. It was really low, so it was almost the same height as the wheelchair. And this way I can pick him up like a rag doll and pull him into the chair so I can wheel him in to the bathroom, which was right next to the bed. And there, I helped him clean himself, bathe himself, go to the bathroom, clean his teeth, everything like a mother would maybe a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old. And there I was, desperate for answers. And after so many visits to doctors and appointments, and I started researching, because I was working for a medical publisher at the time. So I had access to books and authors and all the journals, and I started reading and reading day in, day out. And after emails and readings and everything else, I decided to make serious changes to our diet because I knew that you are what you eat. And that's not a lie. You are what you eat.
So as you would expect, the mother of an only child, she did absolutely everything in her power to try and remedy the situation. And she tapped into every single resources that she had, which were plenty, by the way. And we figured that the first order of business was to actually cut back on the red meat and poultry we were consuming to see if that would actually have some sort of effect on our health. We treated that sort of like a theory and a hypothesis to see if it would actually work. And lo and behold, a couple of months later, I'm having less and less relapses because my condition ended up being chronic, which means that it would rear its ugly head every so often, maybe like 2 or 3 months, and I would have to have a nurse come and administer some IVIG, which is like an intravenous concoction of antibodies, as well as be on all sorts of immunosuppressants and corticosteroids. So little by little, my relapses started becoming less and more apart, which is a sign of good things to come. And so she and I started looking at each other and thinking, you know what? What if we cut back on red meat and poultry entirely and become the pescatarians, right? And so that yielded even more dividends. And so my relapses became increasingly more and more apart. And that's when we realized that she was right all along. Like, we are what we eat. And so we started taking things a little further each and every time that we decided to exclude animal products. And so we cut back on the fish as well and became the actual vegetarians. While being vegetarian, my relapses went from 2 months to 6 months. So she and I knew that we were onto something, right? And this is a point in time where social media algorithms start rearing their head and popping up on my newsfeed. And that's when I came across the videos that would forever scar me in a good way, I should say. That's when I started being a witness to slaughterhouse footage of animals that, were needlessly dying for my aforementioned steak and poultry. I saw videos of commercial mass fishing that was contributing to the salmon and the codfish that I would love to eat for lunch. And so it was then and there that I stopped myself in my tracks and thought, you know what? I don't want to sponsor this anymore. I don't want to continue putting my hard-earned money into these companies that are creating this that is now evidently causing me to be ill. And so I had the heart-to-heart with Mom and told her that I wanted to sort of put this into perspective and take things all the way to what is now my lifestyle, which is veganism. I told her I wanted to try being vegan because of this ethical dilemma that I was now experiencing on social media. So as you can expect, out of solidarity, she actually took the plunge with me and eliminated all animal products from our diets. And we did it together. Like, we literally took the plunge together. And what started as plant-based for my health was now officially vegan for the animals. And it's just a win-win situation for everybody. I was recuperating from one of the most devastating medical conditions that has ever plagued me, while at the same time realizing that I was now in tune with the reality of what it is that I was putting on my plate. And so that moment in time, I remember as if it was still yesterday. I made the decision to be vegan, not just for my health, but for the animals as well. So fast forward to 2019. By then, I had already been vegan for close to 3 years. And I was honestly the best decision that I had made. Granted, I'm not married or have kids, so that's why I can afford to say that. And I wanted to do something special. I wanted to sort of imprint the decision that forever changed my life still to this day. It had returned my health. Granted, a couple of doctors said there's no cure for what I had, but veganism has kept it at bay, at least the plant-based version of that. And so I've been in remission ever since, close to almost 9 years now. I see so many people still struggling with it, whereas I'm, by the looks of it, essentially cured, if you will. And so I wanted to give back and sort of give myself a friendly reminder that this decision forever changed my life in a positive way. And so I started thinking to myself, what could I actually do to, commemorate such an impactful event in my life? And that's when I thought about getting a tattoo. So since 2019, I've been on the lookout for something that could actually be of my liking, a style that I was interested in, and figuring out what my vegan tattoo was going to be. I figured it was not just a way to tattoo this eventful moment in my life, but also make it a conversation piece for when I'm in public, taking the train, or just simply out and about. And I landed on a style that I loved, emanating from Germany. It's called trash polka. And something about this style is very unique, and it spoke to me. And so I started looking for the perfect way to incorporate all the things that I think encompass my veganism to this day. So I started whipping out some renderings of things that I wanted to put together and mesh into my trash polka tattoo. And the hardest part was out of the way. The only thing was missing was getting the right tattoo artist to help me out and make it a reality. I start reaching out to different tattoo artists on the island, and I stop myself in my tracks and think, you know what would be absolutely cool? If you could not just get a vegan tattoo, but you can get it done by a vegan tattoo artist. And so I hop on social media and I start looking up to see if anybody knew of vegan tattoo artists. And to my surprise, I actually came across two, and I ended up reaching out to one of them to see if he would actually take it upon himself to give me this majestic piece that I've always wanted. And so I come across a tattoo shop. It's called Sacred Pain Tattoo. It's in Puerto Rico's famous 65th Infantry Avenue. Place was pretty cool. I enjoyed my time there, and I met this vegan tattoo artist. He goes by the name of Anthony Lozada. Really exceptional work. I loved his style. And I asked him if he would be able to put together a compilation of what I wanted my vegan tattoo to be. And so a couple of weeks goes by, and we schedule the appointment, and he shows me this beautiful piece that he put together on one of his drawing apps. And we tinker a little bit here and there, but at the end of the day, I loved what he put together. And we make the appointment to tattoo this on a Thursday. Took the day off from work, and it was the most beautiful pain I think I've ever endured in my life. I loved every second of it. So I knew all along that I would eventually make the focal point the classic vegan V, with a little bit of blood representing the unnecessary bloodshed that veganism is trying to eradicate from the face of the earth. And with that, I wanted to also incorporate three of the most important pillars for me when it comes to veganism, which is love, compassion, and respect. Love for animals and yourself, compassion for everything around you, as well as respect for life itself aside from your own. So I wanted to make sure those three words are implemented in his trash polka design, and I absolutely love it. Thinking about finalizing the tattoo, but at the end of the day, I honestly think this is one of the most beautiful pieces I think I've ever seen in my life, and I'm happy I got it done from a vegan tattoo artist. Now that it's fully healed, I look down at this beautiful piece of art my friend Anthony put together, and all I gotta do is just close my eyes, and I'm right back at the darkest days of my life and what led me here, which is why I wanted to share the backstory of how I actually landed on this vegan tattoo. It's also going to serve as a friendly reminder that my brightest days are always ahead, and it's definitely going to be that North Star, right? The focal point of where I want to be and who I want to be on this earth, not just how I treat it, but with whom I share it.
After months and months of seeing my son paralyzed, and me walking down the stairs every morning, just asking, please let him move at least a pinky. So many memories, so many struggles. But the one thing I remember, and I'll never forget, is one morning I walked down the stairs And Francisco was lying on the bed like he always was, waiting for me to get up so I can take him to the bathroom, crying his eyes out. And I picked him up and I pulled him toward me and I hugged him and I said, "Don't worry, one day we will smile back at this. There's a reason for everything." And here we are.
I hope you had a lot of fun watching this video as I did opening up to you guys. I wanted to share my story of how I got here and get you guys to know me a little bit better. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.